JAMBRE's going to have decisions to make right from the off here as to how big he wants to make this Van Cleef.
Yes.
And whether he wants to play around Shadow Word Death or just make a more sensible 4/4 minion, which is the old priest meme that priests can't deal with so easily.
Yeah, and well, not a bad hand for Pieman either, while he doesn't have any of his major dragon. Wow. Double Northshire Cleric, double Power Word Shield. He can make some very beefy minions that are difficult to deal with for JAMBRE. However, will that matter if JAMBRE just drops like a 6/6, 8/8 Van Cleef on the board? There's very little that you can be doing about that one unless Pieman just manages to find a Shadow Word Death early.
There it goes! So
As I dare to utter the words.
Full Northshire with Shadow Word Death versus a handful of nothing in some regards, a handful of everything in others. It depends exactly how you see it.
A handful of Van Cleef, but the easy counter available for Pieman. And obviously, we'll go for that Power Word Shield, just looking for future turns, and drops the second Cleric. But now he's found Wormrust Agent. If he can start to find some dragons in the future turns as well, he could actually start to not only get that Wormrust Agent down as a taunt, but also buff it up with his second Power Word Shield.
Okay, so JAMBRE is just going to take his time here to remove these before they get out of control and delay the Edwin decision. The more of this stuff he can keep in his hand, obviously the more of an auctioneer turn he can have later as well.
Yes.
So it's not just all about the Edwin.
No, and I think a key thing to point out as well is, while we've talked about the Edwin a lot, JAMBRE isn't forced into that line of play.
Right.
He has options right now because Pieman, yes, he got the double Cleric start, but actually 2 Clerics isn't that useful for you. And he hasn't got any dragons yet. So he doesn't have this crazy board presence that Dragon Priest can sometimes have in an early game.
Yeah, and you can often plan. I mean, one of the reasons that Dragon Priest doesn't do particularly well against decks like Rogue, or one of the many reasons, is the Rogue knows when it's going to be under pressure. It knows when it's about to die. There's just no hurry at all, like you've just said, to worry about this board at all. I mean, it can get out of hand later, but the turn where you go Gadget Sand into Preparation, into Backstab, into Sap, you probably don't Preparation into Backstab. That probably doesn't end too well. But,
but yeah,
it already costs 0.
Yeah, absolutely. You know when you're safe to do that because Dragon Priest really doesn't have any burst to push. It's very consistent damage coming out. On the other side, though, when you're playing as the Priest, maximum HP of 30, no way to gain armor if you don't have a taunt up when he wants to go for the Questing Adventurer play, when he wants to go for the 10 damage, 14 damage Leroy with Eviscerates mixed in there. There's very little a Priest can do to stop that. Yeah,
impressed with JAMBRE here already. I didn't have him down as a particularly slow player. And already he's thinking... I mean, this hand is a very complicated hand. He's got a lot of decisions to make regarding the whole hand. There's so many ways he can go. But already he's planning a long way ahead and just slowing it down and, you know, taking it very, very seriously. Yeah, this is definitely a thought-provoking hand. He's going to deal with the Bran with an Eviscerate in the end, and we're going to see that Van Cleef dropped very early on in this game, kind of as expected. When you're given a Van Cleef with that many spells to play with it, it's very difficult to know that opportunity. As we're aware, though, the Shadow Word Death in Pieman's hand is going to ruin JAMBRE's day. Yeah, interesting that he went for it on turn 3 as well. Priest on turn 4 is going into something like their Twilight Guardian, something like almost exactly Twilight Guardian. Yeah. Because something like meme doesn't quite work. But he could have held off one more turn to make the Shadow Word Death deal with it on turn 5, which means something like a Draconic Operative couldn't come down. So he went for it on turn 4 because it was natural for him to play his other cards on that turn. He didn't force the turn. I think he'd like to have delayed it one more if he did. And once again, we see Pieman in this awkward situation where this is the ultimate awkwardness of dragon decks in general. When you don't find the dragons, you're just playing minions that are bad value. Right, and JAMBRE's face said it all. He pulled a face as if to say, "Oh, you've got no dragons, huh?" That's unfortunate, friend. Yeah, it's not just the fact your hand isn't very good, it's also the fact that your opponent gets that information, but now he's in for an accident. Yeah, and you saw the sigh of relief on Pieman's face as he finally draws a dragon. He's like, yes, I can use this Corruptor, I can gain some board control, make sure that there's nothing JAMBRE can do about it now. The Auctioneer, though, it's finally time to start to get this card draw on the go. He's got a Conceal in hand as well. Won't have mana this turn to go for anything like a Questing Adventurer if he had drawn it, but another coin available. Now Questing Adventurer, if next turn he can find a Conceal during his draws, this could start to look very good for JAMBRE. Yeah, this is what we were saying about the Priest deck. Pieman's going to put JAMBRE down to 9, but JAMBRE knows there's probably no more burst at all in this deck unless... No, there's probably no more burst at all because both of these guys are on the board. They've done their 3 damage, or one of them has. And so now it's all about just, if I can deal with what I can see, I'll win the game. Although it's not going to be that easy.
Yes, and that's the key thing. If he can deal with this board, but Pieman has gone very wide on the board and with some very tanky minions. Minimum health of 4, maximum health of 7. This, as a rogue, is a very difficult board to deal with. And you got to bear in mind, Pieman is threatening lethal right now. I'm not sure that there is a single way that JAMBRE can survive this.
So he has to sap the 2-7, I feel. The Auctioneer can trade into a 5-4. He does have a backstab to at least do some damage. Doing all that stuff, he'll draw 3 more cards and still have 5 mana available. He'll also draw more cards, draw more cards. The decision he needs to make now, and he needs to make it quickly, is am I going to play a Questing Adventurer?
The answer is apparently yes, as that one's going to go down onto the field, and the card draw begins. Let's see what he can draw into, because you've got to assume that he needs something along the lines of an Eviscerate Silence. You, I guess, could use that on the 2-7 instead of the
it solves that taunt problem a lot because it costs 0 as well. This is why I said he had to make his decision quickly. This turn was always going to take a while, and now JAMBRE has basically had to do these last few things with no information about what he's about to pick up. He's going to have to trade the Auctioneer into the 5-4 just to stay alive, but he knows he's not dead yet, and his board is still fairly decent.
Just about surviving on 2 HP there, but still not a great looking situation for him. However, he has a lot of damage on the board, and that means that Pieman has to deal with this board himself, has that Shadow of Death available for the Questing Adventurer.
Picking up the Twilight Whelp as well allows him to play down the Twilight Guardian. He's already seen that a 2-7 taunt got silenced, not removed. He can set up a very similar sort of board state this time around. He can make a 2-9, or he can make kill the Questing and make a 2-6.
One of the big questions, I was going to say, do you kill with the Shadow of Death, or do you trade minions in? Either route would have been available for him. Does decide to go for the trades in the end, because he wants to use these 1-attack minions to trade with the 1-1s, make sure that there is no board presence whatsoever, and still continue to push damage to JAMBRE's face.
Yeah, and looking really, really bad for JAMBRE here. He's got no way of drawing the cards. The Auctioneer has gone, and you can see the nerves on Pieman's face. He would love, more than most people would love, just to get this first game on the board, your first ever big league, and it looks like he's going to get off to this flying start.
JAMBRE not looking happy about this one at all. That's a face that we're kind of used to seeing JAMBRE pull. He's generally, across last season, we saw him be a fairly emotionless player. Not in a negative way, just in a... When he was playing the game, it was game face on. We know that he has a history playing poker as well, so it's kind of expected at that point that he's going to have this poker face, and each individual matchup isn't going to affect him too much. But Pieman, as you said, going to be over the moon about getting the first game out of the way like that. Yeah,
it's going to help him settle into this. I know sometimes it's overplayed about, oh, get one on the board, blah, blah, blah. But I really think that if Pieman had done badly at the start of this, and then going to week 2, and then, no matter what now, he's taken a game off the reigning champion, one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, he's going to be ecstatic about this first game. He can't get too excited, though.
Sure.
This is only the first game in a best of 5. There's still a long way for him to go. He's got his Dragon Priest out of the way, but the Miracle Rogue will still be in that lineup. We know that Miracle Rogue is the kind of deck that it's kind of all or nothing sometimes in what you draw. Like, if you can draw correctly, like, for example, in that game, had Van Cleef gone down and there wasn't a Shadow of Death,
yeah, end of game.
You've already won at that stage. And we saw that so many times during HCT as well. These 10-10 Van Cleefs go down, and it's just like, what are you really going to do about that?
And then the second Shadow Word Death there, of course, very handy to deal with that questing at the right time. But even so, 1-0 start, just perfect. And JAMBRE's got something to think about here. I don't know if he'd have expected this tonight going in. It's very hard to research people who don't want to be researched.
Absolutely. And you've got to assume that's why JAMBRE's kind of gone for these meta decks, just gone for what is safe, because when you're going against an unknown entity, it's always going to be risky. If you bring some interesting deck that's like a counter, like what do you do? Just guess that they play meta? It's a very tricky situation to pull off correctly.
People sort of go through the qualifying tournament and they try and find a couple of the opponents that somebody's played and ask, you played this guy. What did you think? And they usually go, I can't remember, mate. It was in the middle of a tournament. I wasn't really paying attention to what you wanted to know.
Games. Yeah.
So occasionally you just get a snippet. Oh, I think he might have been the aggro guy. And you go, right, whatever. I'll ignore you as well. But in general, people do try and pick up those bits of info, but it's very hard to get.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find that research, but it is going to be Priest out of the way now. So Rogue and Shaman, the decks remaining for Pieman. Now, wouldn't be too surprised to see a very similar Rogue deck available for Pieman, but we know that he likes to play these aggressive decks. So the Water Rogue also very kind of high up the priority list.
Yeah, and if you're playing against somebody who you can reasonably assume is probably better than you, that's he's only been playing just under a year. One of his friends invited him to a tournament. He's like, yeah, why not? And that's how he got into Hearthstone. I think it's reasonable to assume you think you're the underdog. We may see him go for the Finger deck to level the playing field a bit.
Yep.
Outplay this 5 stupid Murloc. You'll go. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, Finger is a very powerful card. That is
an equalizer, I like to call it.
Yeah, he. I think during HCT he was compared to Call of the Wild in the strength that he. It
was
bring.
JAMBRE that did that. In fact, JAMBRE actually made that tweet.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Was it JAMBRE?
He was the one who first made the sort of the obvious meme version of the tweet that brought that to everyone's attention.
Okay, well, I mean, definitely a very powerful card. We'll see whether that's going to see the light of day tonight. Obviously, we know JAMBRE isn't going to be running that in his Rogue,
right?
But Pieman's still going to have his Rogue available. Now, a couple of minutes ago, production said something in my ear. I didn't really quite hear what it was. Apparently, it's a 2-minute delay, so I wasn't sure if they wanted me to throw something, and I was a little bit nervous on that one. We do have a toilet break for the players. One of the players actually just nipping to the loo between the games, so hopefully he won't be too long before we can kick this one off once again.
Too much information.
Yeah, well, I could have gone further.
I mean, at least it wasn't like one of the tournaments somewhere else last night where somebody had to have a tornado warning break.
Yeah, actually, that's very true. Just hiding under the cellar while the games are going on.
The thing literally came through that the player is in the basement and has been forced to his basement. It sounded very sinister. And we can't continue until he's allowed back out.
We'll be back as soon as the hurricane's done. Now, luckily, nothing too crazy like that going on here in the Prem tonight, but we'll wait until that player has returned. Yeah. I don't even know which player it is. But looking at... I nearly made the mistake of talking about what order do you play in Conquest.
You know,
we all know...
I will shout at you.
Yeah, we all know that's not really a good conversation. It is going to be this Water Rogue. Bringing in the Naga Corsair as well. I feel like Naga Corsair, one of the cards in this deck that is debatable. I've heard a lot of people kind of argue whether or not Naga Corsair belongs in the Water Rogue deck.
Yeah, it's... The phrase was, and I can't remember which HCT caster used it, but I'm going to copy it anyway. The phrase was, it looks like a really good arena deck. And honestly, you have to agree with that. It's just a collection of fairly good cards, and some of them aren't even good cards. Murloc Warleader is not a good card.
The first thing I said when I saw the Water Rogue deck list, or like a variant of it, was this is like a non-Reno deck. The amount of singular cards in this deck that aren't like the vast majority of meta decks that aren't Reno are just 15 duplicates. You have very few singular cards aside from legendaries.
Right.
This one, that's not really the case. You have quite a few singular cards.
Yeah, it just looks like a deck where you've been playing Hearthstone for a couple of weeks. You own a few cards, and like, oh, these are my best cards. I'm going to play with these, and I might craft myself a Finger, and off we go.
Yeah, and
it
we'll
just
see
happens
how
to
it
be
happens.
incredibly powerful.
And actually, with the Swashbuckler grabbing an Ancestral Spirit for Pieman, that is a fun situation to be in. Obviously, a very powerful card, but especially if you put it on something like Shaku, so you can go for extra trades, or something like Finger, when you can get those kills in the trades and then bring Finger back to life. It's re-stealthed again. That's the key thing. Like, that can be an incredibly powerful combo. Obviously, a combo you don't get to pull off very often, since it's not a rogue card.
Right.
But when things like that happen, you can definitely pull off some crazy wins.
And we're now privy to JAMBRE's deck. It is a mid-shaman, or mid-jade shaman. And it has a whole bunch of jades, and he's going to have to hurry. If you can start getting those jades on the board, then sure. And he's kind of lucky at the moment that Pieman's hand is a little bit awkward.
Yeah, Pieman has a lot of the tools necessary, but doesn't necessarily have any great combos available. Eviscerate in hand, he does have a way of dealing with Bran should he really want to. I wouldn't be surprised to see the SI7 agent. Actually, Naga Corsair going to be the answer. The one that we just kind of talked about is actually going to be the savior for him, so he can play on curve and deal with the Brand.
Yeah, and again, playing your big minion going into turn 3 means that Hex is a very, very bad option. So JAMBRE is going to fill up the board with more. If he hexes there, not only does the Hex cost an extra mana, but then you can't reply to the next thing they play. So at some point, even though this is probably the biggest minion in Pyman's deck, and one of the best Hex targets, you can't afford to just sit there and keep giving them the initiative back.
And especially against Water Rogue, you have to be very careful with things like Hex, with your removal in general, because Water Rogue, aside from Hex, just has pure damage removal. And when you're going against a board of Warlocks with 2 War Leaders in play, suddenly everything just becomes 1 or 2 health away from Lightning Bolts, away from Jade Lightning. So you have to be very cautious about that Hex and maybe save it for a War Leader or 2 and make sure that you're using in the optimal situation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, with that in mind, if he decides to use this Lightning Bolt here, or if he decides to try and maybe try to be cheeky with trading one of the minions. Yeah, he thought about it, but it's just too much damage you're taking with the implied hand that he can see that Pyman has. We can see that actually Pyman's hand is kind of not actually that great as this deck goes. But JAMBRE will be just imagining all sorts of nasty things lurking in there.
Yeah, and I like this Shadow Step play here, using that SI7 agent to clear the entire board, using it as effectively as he can, getting the bonus damage out, and then we'll be able to finish off the other minion with Shaku, so gets an extra card on top of it. Board-wise, everything's looking pretty great for Pyman.
Yeah, very rational play there from the Pyman. Our avatar is just a pie with the number pi around the outside and the symbol of pi in the middle. So you'd have thought he'd be more irrational.
So you can tell that as a man following pi, his calculations are certainly on point. But you can also see Pyman a little bit agitated on camera. Clearly, perhaps a little bit nervous coming into this game. And there's kind of a direct contrast between the two players there. When you see kind of the stone-faced JAMBRE, who he's just kind of in the zone, and then you've got Pyman, who's kind of a little bit fidgety, a little bit perhaps unsure, perhaps nervous in this series.
Yeah,
obviously, I don't want to like push that too much. I don't know whether he's just a fidgety guy, but he's definitely happy with how the game is going so far.
So he didn't attack with the 2-1 first. That's why he's like not very happy with himself. They should have attacked first because the draw he got from the card may have been a turn-altering thing, and his ordering was all messed up there. And that's another thing, actually. When you're first streamed, every little thing you do wrong, you think, oh my goodness, everyone thinks I'm an idiot. Well, you forget that everybody's seen it a million times. You've seen a million streams. You've seen the best players in the world miss lethals. You know, it's all been done before, Pyman. But the first time you're there...
Yeah, when you're on stream, it's a very different experience to playing from home. And let's take a look at this turn here, because Ancestral Spirit is now going to be played, by the looks of things, onto Shaku, one of the targets we really mentioned. He hasn't found Finja yet, so I agree with kind of starting to use that Ancestral Spirit just to, you know, give yourself that opportunity to use it, because, you know, maybe you never find Finja, and I'd say Shaku's probably the second best target you get. But JAMBRE, he's been doing a good job of trying to maintain a presence on the board this game. Obviously, Aya is going to do a good job of accelerating his Jade Golems as well. He'll now be up to 4-4, but he's run out of Jade cards in his hand. Yes, he's got 2 things from Belows, but he's got to hope that he keeps on finding these Jade cards and keeps on finding board presence to drop.
Yeah, and Pyman's doing a really good job of... He's assuming there's no portal, and I think that's a fair assumption. He's wrong. As it happens. He's really wrong. There's a portal, but he's left things on 1 health several times and they haven't been dealt with, so it's a fair assumption to keep going that route. But he's getting really close to just...
It is going to be heavily punished, though. With the Jade Claws off the top as well, the 2 damage to set up the SI7 agent for the Maelstrom portal. And then, on top of that, you can even drop a thing from below. Demand an answer from Pyman. Then suddenly, out of the blue, it's JAMBRE with board control.
Yeah, and so to speak, as they're on the same team. But yeah, and when that second thing from below comes down, this rogue deck isn't particularly good at punching through taunts. What it's really good at is punching through faces, which is why it is a popular deck. And there's the taunt roll there as well from JAMBRE, just to make sure things get even more awkward. And he is going to start setting up this defense, and he is still on 17, so no surprise Leroy going to finish him off here either.
He's deciding whether or not to go with the Jade Claws. He's going to decide to clear the board in the end because he knows he still gets that minion. He still gets the board presence that he would have from below. But as you rightly say, very little removal in this rogue deck. And generally speaking, the removals such as Eviscerate, you actually want to be using on face anyway.
Yeah, and I think he might have to play this Farsight here, which really doesn't want to do. He's going to draw his card, see what he gets.
Ancestral Healing, really not the best card in this scenario. Not what he was looking for. Going to drop the backstab before going with the Farsight. Just making sure that he's done what he has to do this turn, and then he can start to think about the rest.
I think he's just going to put all of his minions that he can play on the board and not take the chance with the Farsight. I don't know if this achieves that much. With the healing, maybe it does because you can defend stuff, but it's messy. Yeah,
the Ancestral Healing suddenly looks a lot better when you have a 2/6 to play with it, because at least you've got something to stop this this board presence getting a little bit too out of control from JAMBRE. But we both know that that 2/6 isn't going to stay on the board for long. The Hex finally going to be dropped here. He can finish that off with the 1/3, and then that means Shaku will be going down for the second time this game now. But importantly, board control still well and truly in JAMBRE's grasp.
Yeah, JAMBRE here is in control. He's looking maybe for an Azure Drake, something like that to seal the deal. On the other side, Pieman urgently needs that Finja. I don't think he has many other ways out here. Maybe a surprise Leroy, but really, JAMBRE's on enough health total that Leroy shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and the really scary thing is that when you're playing this Water Rogue, when you start to run out of cards, there are very few versions of this deck that have like Auctioneer in it. There's very little to refill your hand aside from Shaku. So yes, he'll get the occasional card from Shaku, but even then, you don't know what it's actually going to be. It's a random card from your opponent. So when you run out of steam, especially against a Jade deck that is just going to continue to build up and build up, suddenly things really start to look dicey.
And JAMBRE using the best way to stop your opponent from top decking Finja, which is keep representing lethal on the board. So while your opponent's not top decking their Finja, they're not getting enough time to draw more Finja attempts, and Pieman is now all hands on deck, just not dying, which means that he has to draw the Finja the turn before he's going to use it, obviously. So if he draws it next turn, it's probably not enough.
And now you're in this really awkward situation where, okay, he is going to kill the totem in the end. Oh, the Fork Lightning. Now, do you kill the 5/2? Because if you top deck Finja, you have to be able to kill something with it. That 2 HP Golem could have been huge. It's going to finish it off in the end. I think that is the right decision, but I kind of wanted to bring that topic up of, like, is that your only way out?
He's just dead. That's the problem. He's got to stop the 2-turn lethal, and there's more than half of the damage required on the board right now. So Finja's just not enough without a Shaku top deck. So not only does he need to draw Finja, or I was going to say, or something like it. I can't think what the something like it would be.
Yeah, and now Shaku has been taken out as well. Deadly Poison is just not going to be good enough at this stage.
Yep, JAMBRE got lethal on board.
Yeah, so that is going to be a 1-1 in this series by the looks of things. JAMBRE weathering the storm in the early game, and this is kind of the story of aggro versus mid-range. Unless you can get that kill early, unless you can really push that pressure and consistently stay ahead, the mid-range will eventually just outvalue the aggro deck.
Yeah, I like Pieman's choice, and I like JAMBRE's choice because I like Pieman's choice. I think that Pieman is correct to bring a deck with, let's use the word high roll, let's use it once and once only, a little element of high roll to it with the ordering, the Finja, etc. And I think that JAMBRE is right to predict that and to bring stuff that he feels is going to do well against it. So I think both players bringing the right thing for this match.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is going to be JAMBRE just finishing things off there and tying up this series to a 1-1 scoreline. So, things still up in the air at this point. Now, we still have yet to see the win with the Miracle Rogue from JAMBRE, so I'm interested to see that. I mean, I personally just really love watching Miracle Rogue anyway, so I'm always excited.
You used to play a lot of Miracle yourself back in the day?
Yeah, not quite to the same level that JAMBRE can play it, but I definitely played a lot of games of Miracle Rogue.
Hey, you're a LAN winner as well, nearly.
Nearly, second place, not quite good enough. And also, I don't want to belittle Epic LAN, but there's not that many amazing players at Epic LAN.
This was a bigger tournament, so yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what these guys are going to bring in next. Obviously, Luckily, both warriors are banned, so no pirate warrior coming out. But the water rogue, definitely going to be one that I wouldn't be surprised just to see it queued twice, because again, like all rogue decks, it's sometimes you just draw the wrong things and you can't really push forward. And often with water rogue, it's kind of Finger reliant a lot of the time. If you don't get Finger, it just feels like it doesn't have the oomph to finish off a game.
Yeah, that's what people have been messing with. Some people play like Curator or something like that. We saw there the Naga Corsair for a bit of oomph with the weapon. Everybody's putting their own take on how, the Sharku's a staple in the deck. On how to get more stuff. And nobody's really solved it yet.
The Curator goes back to the point we were making during the game of when you start to run out of steam, there isn't that much in the deck to refill your hand. The Curator kind of seals that weakness in the deck to some extent. We're going to have a rogue mirror matchup here. The aggressive water rogue from Pyman up against the miracle rogue from JAMBRE.
Pyman with an absolutely horrific looking hand here. And I've got to admit, JAMBRE's doesn't look a lot better. These are the hands your rogue opponents tell you they're so unlucky. But there was a good start for Pyman. Now he can actually get on the board and just do something normal.
So in this matchup then, what would the hand be that you would be looking for as the Miracle Rogue, and what would it be as the Water Rogue?
Miracle Rogue, you just want to be able to remove things early, get maybe draw into your auctioneer, draw into your big stuff, get a big Van Cleef on the board. They just can't deal with it. Those kind of starts. Just remove things, make a Van Cleef, boss you for 10 3 times. From the Finger side, you just want a curve. A lot of people don't even keep Finger in some matchups. No matter, even though it's the game-changing card, because it only changes the game if you're doing other things, right?
Absolutely. If you can find it alongside a backstab, for example, then there's a lot of targets that suddenly are very open for you to kill. But as you rightly say, in a lot of situations, it's very difficult to find that kill with Finger, and often you'll see Finger and a War Leader drop the second turn so that you can push that extra 2 damage much more easily, guarantee a kill.
Was really impressed with Pyman on turn 1, by the way. He drew the 1 drop he needed to play, and he just took a moment both to sort of compose himself and not just go, hey, I've just ripped a card off, I can play. It was his only sensible play, but he just took a moment to make sure it wasn't a total giveaway that he hasn't got another 1 drop. Alright, so JAMBRE already in a decent looking spot here.
Yeah, the Azure always going to be a nice drop when you've got a backstab in hand. That's 1 War Leader down. Obviously, second one will be available for Pyman if he draws that or Finger. But the Azure came down for turn 4 from JAMBRE with a counterfeit coin. We could well see a coin Azure from Pyman as well.
We really could, and we are going to. Because the backstab also will be now 3, which will clear up the Azure Drake.
So Pyman basically saying that anything you can do, I can do better. Out Drakes the Drake, takes up that kill.
Yeah, and JAMBRE's going to have to... Let's see what he draws first. Okay. His play of Patches Eviscerate looks like it might be kind of important. You don't really want your opponent to have all that spell damage extra when they're an aggressive deck, but you also don't really want to go Patches Eviscerate.
No, you certainly don't, but I don't think there's that many choices right now. Often in these versions of Miracle Rogue, where you rely more on minions than you do on your spells, that Eviscerate can be one of the most important cards to have in your hand, purely for that board control, for that removal. Obviously, Patches, you never want in your hand in any situation. You want a different pirate.
Very rarely. Like, in Shaman, you can get away with it if you've got a Flame Tongue, but in Rogue, you're right, it's just not a card you want.
Will be cleared away as well. That's the biggest problem, is it's just a 1/1 for 1. Yes, it's got charge, but you know, and in that scenario, you might as well be running Stone Tusk War, which is basically a dead card. Now, Auctioneer in the hand, but no spells to use it with this turn. Leroy is actually just going to be used here purely because he knows he's got to force the issue.
Right, so he's going with the double concealed, attempt to win it in 2 turns play. It makes some sense. It's also terrifying at the same time. But it does tell Pyman what he needs to do, and what he needs to do is find some more damage, because JAMBRE has worked out that Pyman's hand is kind of bad.
Yep. He knows that there's not that much pressure, because if there had been, it would have already been played. There's the second War Leader, but no other Murlocs to use it with, so you don't get that value out of it. Might just drop this along with an SI7 agent just to really start to try and race for damage. He knows that he's on a timer at this point in the game, and this is where the rogue matchup, Miracle versus Menagerie Warder, whatever you want to call it, this is where it starts to get truly volatile.
Yeah, I mean, JAMBRE is just going to hit for 7, then he's going to hit for 10 or more and win the game that way. However, PIEMAN seems to have enough damage to be able to stop that from happening. No, he's not. He doesn't seem to have enough damage at all. I'm just learning to count again. 3.
So he has 7 from hand along with 11 on board. So he does have lethal next turn, assuming that nothing happens here. Sap in hand, though, for JAMBRE.
Yeah, and the deckhand, but he can't play the deckhand and the sap and the conceal and put down any more damage. So he'd be looking at that way, if he does it this way, to try and draw the lethal damage.
I like this, that he's just saying, you know what, I'm not going to play Auctioneer, it's too passive. It plays for future turns, but I may not have future turns. Leaves that in his hand. He's going to go for that conceal.
He's got lethal on board. This is great.
This is solid play coming out from JAMBRE, and that has removed PIEMAN's immediate lethal.
7 in hand.
Make that 9 in hand now, but there's only 7 on board, which is 1 away.
Let's double check that. I think you're right, but let's just double check that. We are casters after all.
Casters are notoriously bad at counting.
2,
but he does have the mana to use the SI7 agent as well, so I think that is going to be
10,
lethal.
not 9. 2, 4, 6, 10.
I believe he has lethal here.
I believe he has as well. I think every single
thing.
If he doesn't mess up and attack with his weapon first, which we've all done at some point.
Yeah, that would be a painful error to make at this point. I don't think PIEMAN is going to be fooled by that one, though. Has dropped the deckhand.
Attack with it!
Just needs to actually use it. That's the only thing that stands between him and going 2-1 right now. He has sequenced it in the correct order. Look at PIEMAN's face.
Wow, that's how much this means to PIEMAN.
Yeah,
he can't believe it.
And the opportunity to have that kind of turn, because these decks are both very, very complex, and you have to be able to sequence that correctly. PIEMAN manages to find the lethal, manages to make that situation work out for him, and rightly celebrates that he didn't miss that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, fantastic game. JAMBRE just kept putting up, I've got lethal, you haven't. I've got lethal, you haven't. You can estimate how much damage they've got in hand. He was estimating it really well. It came down to a card that, you know, the deck's full of top decks, so it's not lucky, but
that's kind of the whole...
Yeah.
The archetype almost is like when you're looking at Aggro Shaman, there's so many cards you can top deck for lethal. Same with Pirate Warrior, same with this Menagerie Rogue. They're all just super aggressive, want to hit face decks.
And PIEMAN went missing again there. I've got a feeling you'll get a word in your ear again in a moment.
I think he might have nipped to the loo once more, but 1 deck remaining for PIEMAN. It's going to be that Shaman deck. Now, unfortunately for JAMBRE, when you're trying to play a Miracle Rogue that relies on minions hitting face, a Shaman that has things like Think From Below and Feral Spirit, and a quarter chance of just rolling a taunt with your totem is your worst nightmare.
And that's even if it is mid-range Shaman. It may, we've seen some aggressive stuff here, and here is some more aggressive stuff.
We said right at the start, PIEMAN is the kind of guy that likes to play aggressive decks. He has proven that here tonight so far, as we head into the 4th game in this series and potentially the final game in this series. Bloodsail Corsair is going to be run in this deck as well. This is a card that some decks we've seen run it. It's kind of a bit controversial. We saw people taking out even Acidic Swampoos from their decks HCT because they knew the Pirate Warrior was just going to be banned in every scenario.
So you hear me exhale strongly there.
Exhale. Are we talking about JAMBRE here? Exhale.
Wow. Oh no, he's going down the egg route.
Sorry, everyone.
I'm off, guys. I'm off. I didn't sign up for this. So this is a testament to just how good Patches is. I think Bloodsail Corsair is universally regarded as garbage, even by the people who play it.
Interesting turn there from JAMBRE, choosing to dagger. I feel like there was a pretty good opportunity to go for the coin backstab into Van Cleef, just to drop a large minion on the board.
So he wants to go backstab, eviscerate next turn, getting rid of both minions and then Van Cleef as well. Or in 2 turns' time. He's going to play it very slowly and just make sure that he plays the card with the Van Cleef if he can. But he's eating damage here.
Yeah, this is the thing. Against such an aggressive deck like this Shaman, you don't really have that much time to play around and look for the optimum opportunity because it might just never present itself. Patches the Pirate, also available here, is going to go for the backstab along with a deckhand to finish off the Totem Golem. And then we'll drop the Van Cleef as well. So still finds a hefty Van Cleef to be working with. That 8-8 going to be dropped onto the board. Definitely in a decent position in terms of control.
And we saw that in game 1 as well. He could have played a decent Van Cleef, but he waited until the other cards made sense before, rather than just forcing down an early Van Cleef, he made sure he got use out of the other cards beyond, you know, backstab my own guy, shoot myself in the face, which, you know, sometimes you have to do to make these big Van Cleefs. But already he's automatically on the back foot again. He's going to be able to clear this stuff up for the large part, but he's out of stuff. And Pyman has Hammer of Twilight in hand.
Yeah, we'll be able to deal with this totem at least. So the board right now for Pyman is not that threatening. But as you oh, I say that, it is going to become very threatening all of a sudden. 7-7 in hand is going to drop that, I would assume. Hammer of Twilight also an option right now.
Yeah,
just
it's
to
really
consistently
interesting.
push damage.
I mean, this way, if you get sapped, you can replay it because of the overload, but you are getting a long way behind. The Hammer of Twilight isn't pushing anywhere near as much damage, but it's a lot more consistent damage. So that was probably, it was a good play. Just maybe he could have spent a moment more on that, but he's incredibly excited right now.
I do feel like the 7-7 is also just more consistent damage right now, because the rest of your board really isn't that scary and just dies to a single. I was going to say Maelstrom Portal. He's not against a Shaman, but either way, it's a very vulnerable board. Right decision here to just drop those Eviscerates and remove the terrifying Flame Wreath Faceless off of the board. Just going to re-dagger up, but again, Jambre's hand just looking desolate at this stage. Totem Golem available, or Feral Spirits. Feral Spirits actually drops a little bit more pressure on the board, so I like that decision.
I like it as well. It's also just going to defend your stuff over the next few turns, if there is any stuff to defend. And Pyman now not having to make too many decisions. Next turn is just all the overload issues are sorted. Twilight face you. What you gonna do?
Yeah, or there's even an Azure Drake second option available if you wanted to cycle for more cards, but he knows that searching for cards is not priority right now. Ending this series is priority.
This is still lethal, so the trade is absolutely fine. He still has 9 for next turn, so there's no reason not to kill the Drake. The Drake into something like double Fan of Knives could have provoked a disaster.
Yeah. And look at Jambre's face right now. I think he knows that this is not looking very good. We'll drop the Questing Adventurer. He's going to sap something, but I don't think that this is going to be a game that lasts very much longer. Pyman in an astounding spot.
Yeah, it's looking so good for him. And to be honest, watching his face, I'm feeling really happy for him as well. Don't think you see many Hearthstone games where people are this stoked to have won them.
Yeah, he's definitely feeling good about this one. He's not going to finish the game quite this turn, but the Maelstrom Portal and trade with the 1-1, definitely the correct move to make. The worst thing you can do against the Questing Adventurer Rogue is allow that Questing Adventurer to just sit on the board.
Yeah, it just kills you in 2 turns. It's absolutely absurd. Before you know it, you've got a Gadgets and Auctioneer wiping all your stuff out, and you've got a 13-13 against you. And you've got no Hex.
And currently, Pyman basically making the decision, do I need to keep this weapon? Is there anything in Jambre's deck that I know of that will stop me hitting next turn? Decides he's just going to go for the damage. He knows that there's nothing significant he'll have to remove next turn. And that means he is going to take this first series of the night 3-1 and does a little victory dance to boot as well. Pyman coming into the Premiership, dethroning the champion immediately. What a performance.
Yeah, meant the world to him there, and I'm really pleased for him. Jambre took it well. Jambre was angry enough that I'm happy with him, and calm enough that I'm also happy with him. So fair play to Jambre. He's got his own good news for the day. So
yeah, he's had his look for today, I think. Yeah. So, and to be fair, we kind of expect that from Jambre, right? He's shown that he can keep his composure in any kind of situation here in Hearthstone at least, but that is going to be our first game already done with, and quite a quick series as well.
Quick series. I think Pyman made a very good decision just to bring aggressive stuff. First time on the big stage against a player who you know expecting is going to be better than you. just lessen the things that can go wrong, stick to what you're comfortable with, all the obvious things, and he did that really well. Managed to keep himself calm, took a break between a couple of games there. I don't blame him for that. And yeah, just beat the reigning champion, who's now got it all to do in the next 4 weeks.
Certainly does. Only 3 losses available before they're knocked out of the Swiss. Now, we're going to be going into a quick break, but it's going to be another rookie up against a previous champion. Ball control against Ben. We'll see how that one pans out in just a few minutes' time.